Alright, hello. So, welcome back. Today, what I'll be touching on is the follow up when it comes down to how to be charismatic. So, what I'll do is that I'll share three particular principles that you want to keep in mind if you want to be seen to be more likable, or at the very least, you don't want to be hated, right? So, you can say that the principle that I'm sharing with you is the principle that will get somebody to hate you. So if you don't want people to hate you, then these are the principles that you want to ensure that you understand and you actively seek to avoid. So let's get into it. So principle number 1 is going to be don't disagree. And I know that this sounds really weird, right? Don't disagree. So what do you mean like don't disagree? Most of the time when we have interaction, you can say that if we don't disagree, we close ourselves off to learning, which is true, right? If I'm in it for example, if let's say I'm trying to learn a subject, and if I were to give a viewpoint that is wrong to my facilitator, I would want my facilitator to actually stop and disagree with me, right? So that he can change me and he can help me learn. So you can say that there are some circumstances that is going to be this way, but don't disagree is basically working on the principle that most people do not separate their opinion from themselves. So basically, if anybody were to attack our opinion or our conclusions, our ideas, what they're doing is not finding fault with the idea itself. What they're doing is that they're finding fault with us. So it's the whole idea that most people by nature, they have this attachment with their thoughts, their ideas, that makes it so that if you disagree with them, then it almost becomes a confrontation. And you can say that the description or the circumstances that I just explained, right, which is the idea of you have a facilitator that you want the person to correct you, to say that, oh, you're wrong, is going to be on the best case scenario, right? This is the best case scenario, and you can say that most people will use this point of view to justify correcting somebody. So if I disagree with you, and through disagreeing with you, I have accidentally offended you, I will defend my action by saying that what I want to do is that I actually want to correct you so that you are not wrong. I want to help you be a better person. Be it whether or not that's true, most of the time, to my understanding, usually that this rationalization comes after the initial desire to actually correct somebody. And you can say that the reason why we correct somebody goes back to the fundamental idea that we are all looking for a sense of importance, right? Just like the example that I used multiple times, somebody belittling your fear of heights and say that, like, hey, I'm not afraid of heights, man. I can climb up, I can climb down, and everything like that, right? It's, yes, their action is that they're being an asshole, but the idea is that behind being an asshole, what they actually want to do is they actually want to impress you. They want you to go there like, wow, that's so amazing. So even in the situation that most people, when they correct us, right, they want the whole idea, they want the idea of us going there like, wow, thank you so much, for helping me see the world in a better light. I was dumb, I was stupid, I was a sheeple, and then like you enlighten and help me open my eyes, right? This is an extreme example of generally what they want when people correct them. So when I say that don't disagree, right, it works. Basically what I'm saying is that, okay, in the context of if you really want to influence somebody, you can say that the part of influence is that if we have different views, I want you to take on my view. And the fact that if I were to take on your view, should our views be in direct conflict, is going to be difficult for me to actually change your mind. If anything, I want to tell you that you're wrong, and I want to explain all the reasons why you're wrong, and therefore you're going to change your mind. They're like, yeah, actually that makes sense, right? Wow, I can't believe I'm so stupid. Then you are completely right, So the issue with this type of thinking is that human beings do not like to feel stupid, right? And I think that maybe I can write this down right now, right? Is that people don't like to feel pathetic. And I'm going to take a short detour when it comes down to this, right? Which is the whole idea of the sense of sympathy, right? Looking for sympathy as well. The reason why you don't disagree with somebody is because you make them feel stupid. But the idea is that didn't you say that people want sympathy? So if the reason why the reason why people don't like to be corrected is because they make them feel pathetic and stupid, right? But you can say that if let's say someone is looking for sympathy, right, saying that like, oh, I just recovered from COVID, or like, oh, I just lost my job and everything, like, isn't that objectively them being in a pathetic situation and them trying to gain validation through the pathetic situation? The only difference from that and this is the whole idea of like, actually in actual fact, when people are looking for sense of sympathy, they are trying to get validation from being able to survive a difficult situation. So for example, like in the term of COVID, right, they are not trying to tell you that like, oh, woe is me, I got COVID, and therefore please feel sorry for me. They actually do not want you to feel sorry for them, although what they want to hear is that they want to hear that I'm very sorry to hear that, right? But what they actually want to hear from you, or rather the idea of what they actually want you to think of them, is that you are so strong to endure hardship. And I know that actually I did not intend to share this point, but like since I'm here anyway, this goes to the idea of like losing your job, right? They do not want to see you as, they do not want you to feel sorry of them just for the fact of them losing the job. What they want you to feel is that like, wow, this person is such a strong person, although this person is going through hardship losing their job, but like he still carry on, he's still a respectful person. So which is why like this is one thing that I do have to stress, that when it comes down to giving sympathy, right, if somebody is just in a bad situation because they are a lazy piece of shit and they understand that they are a lazy piece of shit. So for example, if like they choose to do nothing to better their life, right? And you say that like, oh, I'm so sorry that your life is this way, it doesn't give them any sense of sympathy, right? Yes, you're giving them sympathy, but it doesn't give them the emotional validation, right? Because the whole idea is that they do not want to feel pathetic, and the fact that you give sympathy to them in a situation that they have fully owned, right, is not because of life screw them over. You can even say that like if they explain in a way of like, well, this thing didn't work out for me and this thing didn't work out for me, I tried so hard for this and I tried so hard for this, but I didn't get both of them, then you can say that like, yes, what you want to do is that you want to give sympathy, right? But should they not do anything about their life and they're just lazy and they don't want to do anything and their life is shitty, you giving sympathy about their shitty life, right, actually makes them feel worse. So this is one thing which I didn't intend to share, but it's just point two now, right? Is that people don't like to feel pathetic, and generally you don't want people to feel pathetic when they talk to you. So going back to the first point, so I'm detouring so early into the video already, right? So going back to the whole idea of when you disagree with somebody, you make them feel shitty, and people don't like to feel shitty, right? So the whole idea is that people will usually fight and defend a point, even if at some point they start to think that like hey, maybe I could be wrong. They would still fight and defend the point out of principle. And you can say that the principle that caused them to do that is sense of autonomy. And sense of autonomy is that if you want to get somebody to dig in their heels and you want them to be stubborn, you want them to resist every sort of influence effort that you're going to put forth towards them, the number one thing that you must trigger is sense of autonomy. And you can even say that like if you were to straight up say that like in this conversation I'm going to influence you, I'm going to change your mind, immediately sense of autonomy is going to kick in, right? They're going to be like, I'm not going to let you change my mind, right? So you can say that to a certain extent, in order to skirt the sense of autonomy, you have to be a little bit sneaky, right? So your way of interacting with the world have to be almost like a thief and robber, and you can say the sense of autonomy is kind of like the police is trying to, that you want to avoid, right? But generally the sense of autonomy is that people do not like to be told what to do because people like to have control of their universe. And when we disagree with them, then what we're basically doing is, in some sense, we make them feel shitty. People by default, they do not want to feel bad, right? They do not want to feel negative emotion. And if it's something that we directly cause them through our action, you can say that this is also a breach of their autonomy, because I have taken away your rights to be happy, and because of that, people get stubborn. And when people get stubborn, when you tell them that they are wrong, they're not going to change your mind. They're not going to change their mind, as even regardless of how good your explanation or your rationale is going to be, right? Just on the principle of sense of autonomy also triggers this, I mentioned this before, which is called the fuck you factor, right? Just for the sake, just because you told me what to do, I'm going to actively not do it. And I'm pretty sure all of us have encountered that in our life, right? Maybe when you're younger, your parents tell you, like, go clean your room, right? Who actually decided, like, you know what? Yeah, that's a very good point, right? I should actually go clean a room, right? The first thing you do is that you're gonna get stubborn, like, I'm gonna clean it later, and then later never comes. So, and going back to the idea of, like, if you want to use the whole first principle, which you don't disagree, but you still want to convince the person, you want to change the person's mind, the first step that you do is you always agree, even if the point that they bring up is opposite of what you want to share. So for example, if let's say, I'm trying to sell you insurance, and you are somebody, and it have encountered, and there are quite a lot of people who have this view, right? Which is, I don't believe in insurance. So you can say that my view and the person's view is in direct conflict with each other. When I'm new, what I tend to do is that I try to explain to them, like, what, insurance is very useful because of this. It has never worked once in my life. And the only when in hindsight I think about it is, it's because I basically, in my explanation, as good as my explanation is, what I basically tell them is that, hey, you're wrong. Like, hey, Mr. or Mrs., you're wrong. And the thing that eventually helped me get better in this process is by agreeing with them. Like, you don't believe in insurance? They're like, I think that you're 100% correct. There are some situations that insurance might not be the best solution, right? So you can say that maybe the first step is that you agree, and then you start to try to change the context a little bit, right? So maybe what they say is that I fully don't agree. Then what you're basically changing it towards is that you're warping it a little bit, like, it's not the best in all situations. And the whole idea is that once somebody see that, okay, you two are not in a conversation versus each other, and what you guys have the same point of view, right? People tend to open up. And when people open up, they tend to like you more. So what tends to happen after that is that you want to listen to all their points, going back to your mirroring sense of importance. Let them talk, let them tell about all the history. Usually what I like to ask is that, like, I'm very curious about something, like, why do you have this viewpoint? Is there something that happened in the past, a bad experience? Then they're gonna share about the past, whatever this thing happened to them, about this company, or like, this agent and everything like that. Then I'll just sit there and listen. And then only after they have finished their own point, then that is when you can actually change their mind, right? You can actually tell them that, like, is there, I agree with you, and based on your situation, I think that, like, a wrong have been done for you, right? Somebody have did you wrong, right? It's very unfair that you felt that you encountered that thing. But I'm very curious, do you think that there's certain circumstances where insurance is going to be useful? Then when in this situation you get them to think, right, and they realize that you're not against them, most of the time people will start to change their mind. So again, it goes back to one thing, like, if you want to be likable, you don't want to be seen as an asshole, and you really want to change people's mind, you never ever disagree with them. Alright, so I have to move on to the next point, so that I can finish this as soon as possible. Not finish this as soon as possible. I want to try to keep towards 30 minutes, right? I have always been overshooting my videos. So number 2, well, you can say that I already touched on this, right? People don't like to feel pathetic, so maybe I move on to number 3. And number 3 is very important, especially when it comes down to relationship. You can say that number 1 is based on the principle of likability and influence. Okay, number 3, what I'm going to share on is more relatable to relationship. But you can say that most interaction that we have, even platonic, is going to be linked to relationship to a certain extent, because again, we are working on likability. Number 3 is that you never, maybe I want to change this to black. Never laugh at someone's expense. If you want to be charismatic, okay, you must never laugh at someone's expense. So, I understand that there are going to be videos online that we see, such as somebody falling down. Not even videos, right? In real life, right? Somebody fell down, or something bad happened, right? But we find that to be hilarious, right? There's videos online that is just basically people being hurt. But the whole idea of you never laugh at somebody's expense is because the person who that joke is at the expense of is not gonna find it funny. We might have a time of our life, right, and we get a lot of positive emotion, and the assumption is that because we get positive emotion, that naturally everybody based on the circumstances is going to get positive emotion, because most people's way of seeing the world is not in a I don't want to say disassociative, but the whole idea is that they don't see it holistically, right? They see it as, if I feel this way, then people must feel this way. So if I feel the situation where you fell down and hurt yourself to be funny, then in some sense you can say that well, it makes sense that you should also be able to see that situation as funny, or wouldn't it be silly and everything like this? And you can say that that is in the case of not really that bad, because that is somebody getting in a situation because of a neutral event. So it is not something that you directly caused, it's just something happened, they slip out of accident, force of nature, that caused them to hurt themselves, right? But there's, in this idea of laughing at somebody's expense, most of the time what I do mean in this context is actually when people make active jokes at somebody else's expense. So if you want to get hated, you want to be disliked, the fastest way to do is that you do this. Because the reason being is that when you laugh at somebody's expense, indirectly you are laughing at their insecurities. And you can say that laughing at the insecurities goes back to number 2, which is people don't like to feel pathetic. Right? People don't like to feel like an ass, they don't like to feel weak. Right? If you give them names, their reaction that they reacted so negatively to it might be funny to you, it might be funny to you and your friends, but it's not funny to the person. Then you can say that in this argument, in the context of never laugh at somebody's expense, right, have two consideration. Consideration number 1 is that, am I an asshole? Or is 2, this person being sensitive? Because you can say that there's circumstances where somebody can be overly sensitive, therefore they find something that should be funny to be derogatory or mean-spirited, right? The way that I see it, how I actually dictate whether or not it's sensitive or I'm being an asshole is, am I in a direct interaction with this person? If I'm in a direct interaction with this person, then you can say that yes, whatever I say directly that makes you feel that way, I am an asshole, right? But in the circumstances, which is, let's say hypothetically, I have a social media platform where I get to post whatever things, right? And I post a meme to my followers, and my account is public, so it's not private. Anybody can see this, but generally, I have basically an account page, right, where I share memes, and some random person would to say that wow, I find that offensive, and I don't like it, and therefore you should take it down. Then I say that in that situation, the person is being sensitive. You can even say that because I'm not in direct interaction with you, why should your opinion matter? And you can say that the reason why I'll even take offense to it, because it goes down to the FU principle, right? Which is who are you to actually come here to tell me what can I post and what can I not post? You actually breach upon my sense of autonomy, therefore screw you. So whenever I talk and think about the whole idea of you never laugh at someone's expense, the lesson that I learned, or the event that helped me learn this lesson, was something that happened to me during one interaction, right? So this was a colleague of mine. And I don't want to say whether or not this is a colleague from my time as a financial advisor or is it a colleague from my time as a police officer, right? But I'll put it in a way of there was this girl, and if I were to describe this girl is that this girl is in general quite cute, quite attractive. And they have to do, basically the context is that there is this project or promotion, right, for the whole idea for the benefit of for the entity that we work for, right? And because I need to be very vague about this because I can't give too much information in case anybody who know more information about this is gonna figure out who I'm talking about. But the idea is that I joked something along the line of like, oh, maybe the reason why they didn't put you as the main focus of it is because like you are not cute enough. And here's the thing, right? You can say that the reason why I did it is because I thought that it's something that she is not that sensitive about. But it turns out that even with my limited knowledge of body language and psychology, I think at some point I figured out that like, oh, maybe she could have like taken offense to it, right? And because the thing is that she didn't really lash out, she didn't really give any sort of pushback when it comes down to this, right? So there are some people who, when they get upset, then what tends to happen is that they avoid, right? They'll be polite on the surface, but then they'll avoid. And there's nothing wrong with that kind of thinking, right? You can say that because by default, not everybody wants to be confrontational and actually fight everybody that makes them unhappy. But it still goes back to the idea of like, it's through my direct action of me joking about something at her expense. And you can say that I see that whole situation as I am the asshole, I'm completely at fault, right? And the reason why you can say that her behavior is very predictable because I have just accidentally touched on her insecurities. So when it comes down to joking about things that you can joke about somebody or things that you cannot joke about somebody, you can say that there are certain things such as things that somebody is very secure about or joking in a positive sense, right? So you can say that there are things such as humble bragging. So humble bragging is the whole idea of like, oh wow, I'm so busy because nowadays I have so much project because I'm earning so much money, man, life sucks, man. The whole idea is that they want to make it sound like it's a bad thing, but actually what they want to do is that they want to brag about a good thing, right? You can use it in the opposite way when it comes down to like insulting compliment. So the whole idea is that if you know one of your friend tend to be very attractive and he has no problem getting girls, then you can joke about something like that, like, hey dude, you're a F boy, man, like you're attracting so much girl, you're breaking so much heart. You can joke about all these things and most likely the person won't take offense. You can even say that in this situation the person will be like, yeah, ha ha ha, whatever. And then it contrasts against like, okay, what if it's something that somebody have no worries being insecure about. So for example, if let's say somebody is filthy rich, they don't have to worry about money, then you can say something along the line of, hey, wow, you are being so cheap about all these things, Of course you can, the context that, this is not a very good example, right? I don't have enough time to actually think of an example off the top of my head, but the idea that I want to put forth is that there are certain circumstances where somebody could be having a positive trait, but that positive trait could be the very source of their insecurities. So maybe to a certain extent, when it comes down to this girl, right? To me, is that she is a cute girl. And should circumstances be different and we clicked and everything like this, would I want to be in a relationship with this girl? Potentially yes, right? Because she is cute and she's adorable, right? So I'm saying like, in terms of like, if let's say we don't know, we take away all the other factors such as who we are as a person, because maybe you can say that I don't interact with her well enough to actually know her as a person. But the whole idea is that based on that, what I'm trying to get to is that I find her reasonably good looking, and it makes sense that most guys who's gonna see her think that she's reasonably good looking, right? But the thing that I joke about turns out to be her looks, which in some sense you can say that like cause her to feel insecure. So maybe she thinks that like, you know, oh, maybe I'm not that attractive. So there is a caveat, right? When it comes down to the thing that you can joke about. In general, when it's a trait that is a strength of the person, usually it's something that is kind of safe to joke about. But in some situation, you can say that like, you know, if you have a friend who is a gym bro and you joke about him like, you know, hey, wow, you look small, man. There are some circumstances where the person will be like, hey, yeah, whatever, because it is so ridiculous that them being big and muscular can't possibly take it that whatever you're saying to be literal and true, right? So they must have to assume that it is joking. But there are some circumstances that if you were to joke about a gym bro being weak, then you can say that most of the time, sometimes the reason why people actually go to gym to get strong is because at some point they felt weak in their life, and they're doing it so that it overcomes that sense of weakness, right? To give them a rational reason to like, I'm not a weak person because clearly I'm so strong. And if you joke about them being weak, then you can say that you actually touch on their insecurities. So the whole idea is that you don't joke about insecurities. And before I move on beyond this point, right, there are some things that in general you should, just by nature of the topic itself, best not to joke about. And this generally comes down to when it comes to a girl joking about age and being old or anything like this, right? So if you want to get a girl to dislike you and find you to be an asshole and stop talking to you as soon as possible, then you probably want to joke about her being old, or joke about her not being pretty anymore, or things that in general people are gonna fear, or such as like joking about somebody balding, right? I think that when it comes down to, especially if the person, you can see that the person is balding, and unfortunately whenever I share about all these things, right, I learn from first-hand experience, right? I'm not somebody who learned all these lessons because I saw someone make the mistake. I myself made a mistake, right? So I remember that I have this very close friend, and I haven't talked to this person in a very long time. But the reason why I didn't talk to this person in a very long time is not because I told this stupid joke. The reason why I haven't talked to this person in a long time is just by nature of like, you know, he's an ex-colleague, right? And I haven't talked to a lot of my ex-colleagues in general. So it's not like we have beef after that, right? We still are generally pretty cool friends. I hope, right? But the whole idea is that I noticed back then, where we are still colleagues, I noticed that like he seems to have a little bit of a bald spot, right? And he's somewhere around like, you know, maybe late 20s or early 30s, I can't really remember. And I said that like, hey dude, like it seems like you have a little bit of a bald spot, man. And I remember how sensitive that he got after that. And the thing is, no, obviously I don't hold it against him, right? You know, I always take the principle of like, if my joke have made someone felt bad, in generally most of the time is I'm at fault, right? I take accountability for that. And I think that the best way to actually tackle this principle of you don't want to joke at somebody's expense is that if your joke actually did harm someone that you are directly interacting with, then own up, right? You know, you can say that it could be the fact that they are sensitive, but most of the time no one is entitled to think that your joke is funny, right? Just like in the situation of that girl, just like in the situation of that my ex-colleague, they are not entitled to think that my joke is funny, regardless of how funny I think my joke is, right? And so long as they find me to be an asshole, you can say that at some point or in some level, objectively, I am being an asshole because I am taking a direct action to make them feel bad. So you can say that, like, you know, potentially that's where I'm gonna end off with principle number 3, right? So I can't even remember if I can remember what I'm supposed to share when it comes down to principle number 4. Because I remember that most of the topic that I want to share about is going to be principle number 1, which is don't disagree, and principle number 2, which is don't make jokes on somebody else's expense, right? And maybe like right now is a good time to actually stop the video. So you can say that maybe today I didn't really share that much. I only share on 2 simple principles, which is the idea of you don't disagree. If you want to be charming, you want to be charismatic, you want to change somebody's mind, then what you want to remember to do is that you do not want to tell them that they are wrong, right? You want to, in anything, you want to actually validate them, listen to them, right? Because when you tell them that you agree with them, most of the time what's going to happen is that people are going to start to open up, When they open up, they're going to tell you about all the stories. This is not your time to actually tell your story. This is the time for you to actually go back to apply what you should when it comes down to mirroring and sense of importance, right? Sit there, listen to them, mirror their words, then give the validation, sense of importance, and the sympathy. And after that, that is when you actually use some ways to actually change their mind. And number 2 is that you don't joke about things that people feel insecure about, right? I'm fairly certain I forgot the third point, because usually I should do this. I should actually write down what I want to talk about in a video, but it's, in some sense I didn't. So potentially there's going to be a future video somewhere down the line. But in any case, today's is going to be quite short. It's just going to be on these 2 principles. If there's any things that you like to add when it comes down to this, or things that you're confused, then feel free to let me know. If anything, then I'll see you in the next one. Bye.